Hey Internet, it's RJ. Welcome back. Thanks for tuning into the show today. Now, today's episode, we are talking about debt. As you see, yes, we love credit cards here, rewards and bonuses, but credit cards are still a debt lending product, and sometimes that debt can creep up on you, but that's okay. So we're going to talk about the different types of debt, how to organize and manage some tools and tips you can use to get back paying down your debt and get back into earning just rewards for straight profit. So, of course, if that sounds interesting to you, then go ahead, press the subscribe button, and let's get to work. Now to lead off, again, like we said at the top, credit cards, this is primarily what we talk about on the show, but there's all different types of debt, so we'll kind of go through. This won't be specific to credit cards, but the credit card debt is the one that can kind of sneak up on you the most, right? So, why is this bad, first of all, for 101's sake? Well, if you're watching this, kind of live at the time of taping, we're in mid-2022, and we've seen the Fed, move interest rates consistently up, right? And that federal funds rate is directly linked to what they call short-term interest rates, which is credit cards, car loans, things like that, with not necessarily mortgages. That's kind of affected by something different, but it is parallel. So for example, the credit card company is going to give you an APR range from, it could be 15% all the way up to 22%, right? And that varies. So if you've taken on quite a bit of credit card debt and then they hike the rate, well, then since it's variable rate, it could go up and you'll be paying more for the same balance. Now, that doesn't really count like fixed loans, right? So generally speaking, once a loan is closed, like a mortgage, it's a 15 or 30 year fixed, so your payment's not going to change. Again, most auto loans are going to be fixed loans, so once it's closed, not going to change. But again, with credit cards, since it's a revolving line, that APR does change. And unfortunately, there's no credit card that's going to earn you enough rewards to outrun the interest payments, right? So that's kind of the main thing. And this goes for all types of debt, which we're going to talk about in a second. Now, overall here, there is a difference between what I would say good debt and bad debt. It is still important to know those. So, good debt might kind of sound like an oxymoron of sorts, but I would define that as like you bought an asset, and an asset is something that's going to bring you in money. So most notably would be like a rental home, right? Yes, you take out a mortgage for it, even if you could pay cash. I don't necessarily know that would be the best use of cash to tie up in one asset. You use it, you rent out the house, and then someone is basically paying the mortgage for you, plus a little bit on top, hopefully, that you can put away for when things break or something like that. Now, on the other side, you'd have something like, let's say you bought a PlayStation or an Xbox, because those are fun, right? If you didn't pay it off, well, that's bad debt, because that Xbox isn't bringing you any money. It might be fun to play Halo, but not helping your bottom line. Now, of course, there's a gray area there where if you were like, hey, I'm an aspiring Twitch streamer and I needed the Xbox to get up and running, well then, again, that's kind of in the gray, and it's more so up to you to kind of keep yourself honest in that gray area, so to speak. So those are different types of debt, right? But like we said, it can sneak up on you. So there are some tools, there are some tips, and best practices to kind of pay down debt. But where we start at is we first have to understand where we're at. We're going to use two things for this. They're not revolutionary things, but, first of all, companies have balance sheets, right? And I like to say, make sure you have a personal balance sheet. So personal balance sheet is really going to take inventory of the income you have coming in and all of your liabilities, all the stuff that is not considered good debt. Well, I guess technically you would put all the debt on there. Anyways, now, what I would say here is that there's a few key items you're going to want to note, especially in the liability section. So you'd want to know the principal amount, how much do you owe. You'd want to know the interest rate on that. You'd want to know the maturity date as well, which is going to be when you've actually paid it off. How long do you have to go? So you want to go know those three things. And you can usually find those in all the statements that they're going to send you, be it this, student loans, what have you. You can be able to find that. And then, of course, you're going to list, all the income sources you have on the other side of that. So that's really just going to show you where you're at, debt to income almost. Now, in addition to that, it's important to establish a budget. Now, budgets can be very simple. You can do weekly or monthly. I would say in between, weekly and monthly is probably one of the best ways to go. It really depends on, some people get paid monthly, some people get paid bi-weekly. So just, whichever one works for you. But at least, at minimum, have it a month. Any farther out, I think, is pretty tough. But, you just want to keep updating it as you go. Now, the reason here is because there's still expenses that we have that I would call unavoidable expenses, right? So, again, in liabilities, we're talking about, again, credit card debt, student loans, medical bills, maybe, things like that. Now, our daily expenses are just things that happen in life. You have to go to the grocery store. That's non-negotiable. You have to eat something. You have to put gas in your car. It's non-negotiable. The majority of us have to drive to work or drive to other places. So you're still going to want to account for those so you can see, where you're at. Again, another big one to put in here is like subscription services, your cell phone bill, things like that. We're not going to debate whether you need a phone or not. Everyone kind of needs a phone these days, but we're going to talk about some of that in a second. Streaming services, another one. All right, so now that we have on one sheet like a standing of where our balance sheet, understanding where we stand at, debt-wise, we also have an understanding of like our weekly or monthly expenses. Before we even get to the tools, there's still a few more things we want to do with these documents. And the first one is with that budget. Again, because we already understand that we're looking to pay down this debt, but to pay down debt, you need to free up money to dedicate towards paying down the debt, right? So, first of all, you go through and see very much so with your budget, hey, I make this much, I make $1,000 a week, whatever it is, and I'm spending $600 on weekly expenses, so I have $400, right? So that right there, on this rudimentary example, you could, in theory, have $400 to commit to paying off debt. Now, it's also important to go through this budget and look for things that you can cut out, right? Streaming services is a good example of that. Streaming services are very popular, but what I've seen or what I've read is folks saying, hey, instead of doing 3, 4, 5 streaming services all at once, I'm going to do one a month. So this will be my Netflix month, and next month will be my Disney month. You just keep canceling and reactivating just like that. And that's a way to, still have access to the content that you like, so you're not, sitting, staring, and watching paint dry all day, but you're not paying for all of them at once. And then in this example, again, they leave the content up most of the time. It doesn't just necessarily go away, so that still works. Again, you can always do the sharing, but they're starting to crack down on that. But that's just an example. You're looking for things that you can cut to free up some money. Now, I do say with this one, be reasonable, because if it's like going to the gym or dieting. If you just go all in, which sounds cool, it's not going to be sustainable, because you're like, man, this life sucks. I don't do anything now. It's like, well, yes. So be reasonable with you cut, but we do want to free up more money. The more money we free up, the more we have to allocate towards debt. And that budget, as long as you're updating it, weekly, monthly, whatever your cadence is, you should always have a good understanding of where you're at. Now, how does this work? We know, let's just say we've freed up $400 or $500 a month, pay towards debt. Well, how exactly do you attack that? Well, that's where these next three methods, I should say, come into play. There are 3 widely accepted methods on how to attack this. So in no particular order, let's start at the top, and the first one is going to be what they call snowball method. So the snowball method focuses on paying off the smallest debts first. Now, obviously, you must continue paying minimums on the other debts. So once a debt is repaid, you then roll the amount you had been paying into that debt into payments on the next largest and the next one above that, and keep going, right? Rinse and repeat. So the idea here is if you're knocking out the smallest things first, you're going to see immediate impact. You can get rid of these small nagging debts here and there. Now, in addition to that, we have debt avalanche, because apparently people who come out with this really like winter sports, I guess. But this one has you pay off your debt with the highest interest rate first. I'm continuing, of course, to pay minimums on the other debts. And then once you do that, you focus on the second highest rate, rinse and repeat. And then the third one here is debt consolidation, which basically says, hey, combine multiple debts into a single new one and take advantage of lower interest rates offers if possible. So again, those are your 3 methods there. Now, it's probably going to be a combination of these if we're honest, but I will pause here for a second. Earlier we talked about real estate for the example. For most of us, a mortgage is going to be our biggest expense by far. It might even be our biggest interest rate nowadays, if we're honest. With that one, I wouldn't necessarily say, hey, pay off your house. Right? I've been in mortgage a long time. That always comes up. Like, should I pay off my house? Should I try? Well, it's over 30 years, right? So it's going to take some time, and it is fixed. And, I do not look at your primary residence where you live as an asset in the sense of it brings you money. It actually costs all of us money, but I don't think it's that serious, because you have to live somewhere, right? So if you rent it, back to our beginning example, you'd just be paying that for somebody else. But if you just go after the house first, you'll eventually pay it off, but your payment won't change because it's fixed, right? You'd have to refinance to get a lower number. And you do get equity, but it almost becomes dead money, because you can't really do anything with it unless you refinance and pull some of the cash out. So that's kind of just my thought on the mortgages. Now, the rest of this, I like to start first with the debt consolidation piece. And this is where, for credit card faithfuls, we will talk about a credit card product. Now, I have a whole video on balance transfer cards, but the short story of it is, balance transfer cards, you think of like the white Bank of America card, Bank America card, I believe it is. No frills, no multipliers, anything like that, but it allows you to, you open it up and basically your credit limit, let's say you $20,000 in credit limit, you can then, use that credit limit to basically pay off other debts, consolidate them onto the Bank of America card, and, there is usually a balance transfer fee. You're just transferring balances from here to one spot. It's usually about 3%, but the plus here is that it's going to have as like a 0% APR will be the intro bonus instead of like cash back. So it'll be like 18, 20, 24 months, something like that. You basically get almost 2 years of not having to pay interest, which is huge because yes, even though you pay the 3% of all, on the balance you're transferring over, you essentially pause all the interest, and it makes it easier to manage because now you just have one spot to do. So I think first debt consolidation will be the best one. Now you're not going to be able to probably consolidate all of your debt. It really just depends on how much you have, where your account's at, things like that. So I would start there, and of course, again, I'll link that video down below because that's going to help put everything on pause. Now with those, you still got to make payments, but you really want to make sure that you're making you pay it off, or you have a plan at like month 20. Let's say it's a 24-month run for the 0% APR. By month 22, month 23, you want to know what you're going to do, whether you're going to pay it off or you're going to like keep it rolling by opening another balance transfer card, extending out your APR promotional like that, because if not, then the credit card interest hits, and it's not a great sign because we've just dumped all this balance onto a card that's probably going to charge you a high APR. Now, in addition to that, the other two, Snowball or Avalanche, it's kind of up to you and what you have on your list. Really, the best way to attack it. Again, pros of going after the highest interest rate first is that, that one's going to be hurting you the most in interest, which is, essentially dead money again, versus, Snowball, where you can knock out a lot of little things in full. I do probably kind of assume that the balance transfer will kind of take care of a lot of the smaller things, just leaving some of the bigger things, but again, it's largely going to depend on what you have on your balance sheet. Now, in addition to the balance transfer card, there are some additional products we won't get too far into, but again, if you have a house, you can consider getting a home equity line of credit or doing a cash out refinance if you wanted to. Again, it gets tougher now with rates going back up, but they are options that you can also use as another form of debt consolidation as well. Again, a lot of this is going to really come down to running the numbers for yourself to pick out which one of these three works for you. But again, I do think it will be a combination of those three, and then a combination of at least a balance transfer or two credit card. Again, a lot of times credit cards get knocked because we think they get us into debt, which is possible, but they can also be used to get us out of debt. So the last piece I want to say here is that, the big piece of this is sustainability, right? So it's making sure that you are updating your, if you get paid twice a month, and maybe you're updating that budget or that balance sheet, twice a month, right? Once a month, whatever it is, because that's going to keep it consistent, and it's going to keep you reevaluating your plan, which I think keeps you on mission and focused versus just doing it once. It's definitely not a static document. It has to be a living document. And of course, just keeping yourself honest, Again, that's why we say we don't cut every single thing out because it's not sustainable. But we should have been able to create a sustainable plan with target dates and goals around it, because you can do the math and figure out, hey, I want to have this paid off by this date, and just keep moving up the list like that. So anyways, guys, that's kind of my plan of attack on how I would go after debt. Of course, there are many other ways to do it, so if you have different strategy or different tools, feel free to drop them down below. I'm sure you'll really be helping out a lot of people. But anyways, guys, if you like this one, drop me a little thumbs up down below. If you found it particularly interesting, of course, consider subscribing to the channel. Again, we're posting content just like this every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And of course, right back here every Sunday with all the news you can use in the week that wasn't credit and finance. Again, question for you guys is just let me know what your strategies have been in the past, what worked, what didn't work, what kind of plans have you used. Love to get your thoughts on that. But anyways, guys, that's going to do it for this one. As always, thank you so much for watching. I'll talk to you very soon in the next one.